Hey, what's up, blue collar business owner? Welcome back to the Blue Collar Prosperity Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Masca, where we focus on helping guide you to have a prosperous blue collar business. Today, we have with us Ryan Englin. Ryan is a disruptive leader in the blue collar hiring and retention space. He is dedicated to the trade. It stems from his childhood with an owner operator dad who worked tirelessly. As the CEO and founder of Core Matters, Amazon #1 bestselling author, and host of Titans of the Trades podcast, Ryan has the experience and the expertise to help businesses hire better people faster. So that is Ryan Englin. Welcome, Ryan. Thank you so much for being here. What is going on today?
Oh, thanks, Paul. We are just getting started. This is the first thing in the morning. My coffee's kicked in. I'm ready to share some wisdom and some value with your listeners.
Awesome. I am looking forward to it. As you know, this is probably one of the biggest pain points in really any business, but especially the trades. Everyone's getting older. Nobody wants to work. It's impossible to find anybody. All the things that business owners say. And you and I know that that's not true. We can still find good people. We can still train good people. We can retain good people. So before we jump into all of your expertise around hiring and retention, we kind of referenced in the intro that you've been around the trades your whole life, but how did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, so I watched my dad do it as an owner operator, and I'd see him get his company up to 40, 50 employees and then back down to 10, and he just did this roller coaster thing. And I remember spending time with my dad after school and on the weekends down at the shop because that's what we did. He taught me electrical, he taught me plumbing, he taught me all this stuff, and I was just like, this is cool. I like this. But I don't want to deal with what you're dealing with. So I did like every good son, and I turned my back on the family business and I went to college, got a degree, and moved into corporate because I thought that's where I'll be able to find success. Turns out I'm not a corporate guy. Took me about a decade to figure that out. So I left that and I started my own marketing company because my belief was my dad's problem was nothing more than he didn't have enough business coming in. If he had more business coming in, he'd have more cash. More cash would mean less problems. And so I was like, I'm going to help companies like my dad just generate revenue and really retain customers long term. That was really our focus, was customer retention. And I did that for a couple of years until clients were calling me up and say, I don't need more clients. I don't need more business. I don't need more any of that. So I need to go figure out how to solve this other problem. I go, what's this other problem? And I'll never forget, it was an HVAC contractor in July in Phoenix. I don't know if you've ever been to Phoenix in July.
It's kind of hot.
The wrong kind of sneakers melt on the asphalt. Like that's how hot it is. And they said, yeah, we're booking 3 weeks out. HVAC. So my air conditioning breaks in July. I'm not waiting 3 weeks to get that fixed. And so just lead after lead after lead was just dying. They weren't getting anything. I said, well, what's really the problem? They go, we got 4 empty trucks. I was like, recruiting is a marketing issue. Like I've known that for a while. Why don't you let me recruit some guys for you? So we set up some processes, some systems, and within 3 weeks, we filled all those trucks. They had a couple more on order, and they're like, whoa, that was cool. And so I started calling other clients, and I said, hey, this really worked for these guys. What do you think? And that was in 2015. So it's been 9 years, that we've been doing this exclusively. And that's what we did. I shut down the marketing company. I said, I'm going to teach people how to do this stuff. I'm going to teach them to fish for the best technicians. And yeah, we built the system, wrote the book, started the podcast. It's just been one thing after another just to bring this information and this system to people in the trades, people that were like my dad, because that was his big problem. He never had enough people he could trust.
Phenomenal. And it's so true because once we figure out, I mean, assuming you're a good company, we build a strong brand, the word gets out, these guys do good work, Google reviews come in, all of a sudden, marketing more or less, I mean, it's not on autopilot, but the phone's ringing. And now it's like, how do we kind of, line up demand with supply of, hey, like you said, we're an HVAC company in Phoenix in the summer. We need more people because no matter what, someone's going to call us because there's just a lot of people and there's not a lot of businesses out there serving this population. The average age
Yeah.
of people in the trades as far as owners is like almost 60. So there's a supply and demand issue. You figured it out. A lot of people listening to this haven't figured out why is hiring so hard for so many companies out there in the trades.
they haven't kept up with the times. I mean, that's the big 50,000-foot view, is that the job market has changed. The world has changed in the last 20 years. And I think so many owners have kept their head down saying, oh, this won't affect us. This won't impact us. They kind of have that newspaper mentality in the 2000s when the internet was coming around. They're like, oh, people still want to read the newspaper with their coffee. Yeah, on their iPhone. They don't want the paper. And so all these newspapers had to go digital or go away. And I think what happened with the industry is we said, hey, you know what? We don't have to be attractive. These are good paying jobs. These are credible jobs. People want these jobs because you don't need an education. You don't need this. And you can go make a lot of money and have a great career. So we as the industry don't really have to do anything different because everybody knows these are great jobs. Like they're just going to show up in droves. Kids are going to wake up and say, YouTube influencer, forget that. I want to go be a plumber. Like that's the mindset of the industry. And it is so far from the truth. You know, kids these days, they want to be influencers, right? They want to be on Instagram and they want to be on YouTube. And yet company after company in the trades, they're not online. They're not influencers. They're not doing these things. And so these kids are like, no, I want to do something that seems more fun, something that I get to brag to my friends about. My friends aren't going to care that I want to be an iron worker, right? Like that's not cool. And I think that's a big part of what the industry has missed. And there are companies out there that are figuring this out, but as an industry, we still haven't got the message.
Yeah, I mean, and it's so true because I mean, America was built on blue collar work, right? Like that's just what we do. We pack our lunch, take the lunch pail, go do hard work. But I feel even, go back even further than 20 years, even when you and I were growing up, everyone told us don't go in the trades. Like that's stupid. It's hard work. Go to school, get good grades, go work for somebody else, go work corporate. I work corporate because that's what everyone told me to do. My dad was in the trades. He told me don't do this. He said, go. For so long, it's been ingrained to us that you're an idiot if you don't go to college and rack up all this debt and then, go work at Starbucks. Like that's what happened. So
Yeah.
it's, to your point, it's like, man, I can't even find enough people that want to work for $50 an hour. And to your point, they're probably out there if we're doing it better, differently. It is, 2025 and things are a little bit different than even when they were, 20 years ago. So when it comes to recruiting, so let's assume we got over that mindset shift of like, okay, now we actually got to go recruit. We got to actually market for people like we market for customers. What's the biggest mistake you see people making when it comes to actually recruiting people into their trade organization?
Uh, Most companies think that it's still about money. If I pay more than the other guy, I'll get the best talent. That's the belief that is incorrect. It is not true. Study after study proves it's not true. People do not leave jobs for money. People leave jobs because of people. And anybody that leaves you for $1 more an hour is just glad to get away. Right? $1. I mean, think about the stress that someone has to go through to switch jobs and what that does and that uncertainty it creates in their family and their life. Nobody does that for $1 an hour. $10 an hour, maybe, but not for $1 an hour. They leave for $1 an hour because they don't like the working conditions. They don't like the culture. They can't stand their boss. They got passed over for the promotion. Promises aren't being kept. Communication sucks. And they're like, yeah, I got to get out of here and get somewhere else. And so that belief that it's all about money is the thing that I think is holding so many business owners back.
Yeah. And I mean, I would agree, Ryan, because you look at a lot of job postings out there and like, that's the only thing they talk about, right? Is money. Oh, $40 an hour, $50 an hour. We go on Facebook, everyone's complaining. I can't even find anybody for $40 an hour. I'm offering $10,000 signing bonus, all these things where you're not talking about all the other things that people want, especially in 2025, right? Like you said, people want to be recognized. They want to be appreciated. They want to work in a culture that is, open to what's important to them. They probably don't want to work weekends. They probably don't want to be on call at 2 a.m. to go, fix somebody's HVAC, all the different things that we believe money can solve. Well, suck it up. You're getting paid. That's what your job is. That's like 1970s mentality, right? Like 2025, a little bit different mentality. And if you ask people why do they love where they're working, I'm sure you do this every day. Probably nobody who works at a place they love say, I love it because I get paid more than anybody else. They'll list a million different things. So that kind of folds into now we've got to hire. So we've overcome the mindset. We've figured out, hey, we got to actually have an attractive, compelling copy on our job wanted, whatever postings that we're putting and the content we're putting out there and the social media stuff that says, oh, this looks like a cool place to work. But now we actually have to hire this person, which a lot of times it's just like, hey, there's your truck, there's your keys, your schedules, here's your schedule, see you tomorrow. What's the one thing we can do to actually make hiring easier, not only for us, but the people we're actually bringing in the door?
That's a loaded question. There's not one thing. It's a series of things. So think about the employee experience. We all talk about customer experience. What kind of experience do we create for our customers? But we always forget to think about the kind of experience we create for our employees, right? But when you dig down to it, who delivers our customer experience? Our employees do. So let's put an emphasis on the employees and let's put ourselves in their shoes for a second. So think about this. Remember, people don't leave jobs, they leave people, right? They're not leaving for money. They're leaving a boss. They're leaving a company culture. They're leaving that toxicity. And they got to get out of there because it's impacting their home life. It's impacting their personal life, whatever it is, they've got to get out of there. So they come on and they see this amazing ad and they see this great website and they're like, that's a company I want to work for. So they apply with you. And then what happens? It gets sent to an email and it sits in an inbox that hasn't been checked in a while. And we think, gosh, we got to hire so desperately, but I got this fire to put out and I got this call to go on and I got this project to go look at. But if I had more people, I wouldn't be burning the candle at both ends. So I'll just let it sit there for a week. Now, this is somebody that applied because they needed to get out of the situation they're in. Guess what? You're not the only person they're applying with. They need to get out. So it sits in your inbox for a week and they apply for 10 other jobs. Actually, ZipRecruiter says 21 is the average number of jobs people apply for in the first week. 21 other jobs. One person has to pick up the phone and call that person faster than you. And they're going to go with that person. Because they're like, I apply, I never hear back. I get ghosted. And then we call them, they're still looking for work. And we're like, well, yeah, come on in a week. And they're like, I got to get out of where I'm at. And then they show up, they start with us. We finally offer them the job. We toss them the keys. We say, there's your truck, go. And then 6 weeks later, they quit. Well, yeah, because you let things sit in your inbox. You took forever to get back to them. Well, 20 other people courted them and someone with a better offer or a better process, or heck, in that case, more pay, because at this point, they're not looking at you as any better than the job they left. And then they leave you for someone else. So like, see, nobody wants to work. Everybody's lazy. And it's like, well, hold on a second. This guy wanted to work. He applied on a Monday and it took you 2 weeks to get back to him. Clearly, you don't want to hire people. And so I think that's the big thing is we need to take a step back and put ourselves in the shoes of the candidate and say, what are they going through? How do we eliminate some of this stress and uncertainty in their job search? But we don't do it because we blame we're too busy. We got so many other things going on. I'll get back to that guy later. And then we're mad when it doesn't work out. So I think if there's one thing, it's put yourself in their shoes and make it an amazing experience.
Yeah, I mean, you hit on a couple of things. One, I mean, it's so true because you said, focus on the customer experience. If we're running an HVAC company and it's the shoulder season and somebody calls or somebody sends an email, we're on it within like 30 seconds. We're fighting for that customer. However, when it comes to employees, we're just like, I mean, if they want to make $50 an hour, they'll still be around, or I'll get back to them, whatever their excuses are. But it's so true. If that's the number one issue in your company from growing, then you should probably treat it like the number one issue and put a system and process in place. Actually show the people that, hey, we're an awesome place to work. And we would love to have you come work with us. Look how great we are. We respond right away. We send videos. We do emails. Your interview experience is amazing. Your first day is amazing. All these things, but very rarely does it happen. A lot of times it's also, in my opinion, the mindset of, well, we're just a trade company, right? It's just a plumber. It's just an electrician. Like, they're just here to do the work. They don't care about that stuff. That's for, Silicon Valley. And it's not, because these people grew up around all of that stuff and that's what they expect. So on that note, what are some things we can start doing to make this easier as far as getting back to people right away? What are some systems and processes either you see, you implement to take the burden off the owner or the hiring manager to make this, onboarding, recruiting, hiring phase very streamlined for the applicant?
Yeah, so I'll get to the system in just a second, but you touched on something I really want to emphasize. This is important, is that you have to treat this like the number one issue in your business if it's the number one issue in your business. Nobody listening right now would be shocked if someone called and said, "Hey, I need all my ducts replaced and I need a new system installed because I'm cooking right now." You'd be like, "That's a $20,000 job. I'm on it." But if you let that sit for a week and then you finally called the customer and the customer was like, "Oh yeah, I found someone else." You'd be like, "Yeah, that's my bad. I let it sit for a week." But if we call a candidate and they're like, "Yeah, I already got another job," we're like, "Well, I thought you wanted to work here." Like, we're shocked. On the other side, if that candidate's still looking a week later, that might be a huge red flag, especially if it's summer in your HVAC, right? But we don't think about it like that. Like, you need to think about it just like a customer. We encourage people 15 minutes is the maximum amount of time between when an application comes in and the candidate receives a response. And one of the best ways to build a system to help you do that is by implementing an applicant tracking system. Now, I don't want to get into the weeds on an applicant tracking system, but everybody listening right now has a CRM in their business. They have some way of managing the customer relationship because they know how important it is. Well, an applicant tracking system is a way to manage your recruiting pipeline because it should be that important. And you can set up automated emails and text messages and scheduling, and you can let the system take care of so much that you're used to dealing with once you implement this thing. They're not hard to implement, but
they are not. And they're a lot more affordable. Shift. They're a lot more affordable than a Service Titan too. But you're right. I mean, it is a mindset shift of like, we have to have a software or a CRM just to manage our applicants, but it's a lot easier than just like going to Indeed and be like, "Oh, you're getting all these random emails. And then what do we do with them next? And where do we send them next? And how do we get them a personality test and all that?" When an applicant tracks, I mean, I've been using my own businesses for probably 10 years. We use Jazz HR for a long, long time. And there's a bunch of them out there, but they're very affordable, less than $100 a month. Now you have to take the time to set it up and build it, just like something like a Service Titan or a Job or a House Call Pro. But it makes your life a lot easier too, because then it's all in one place. You can see where everyone's at in the process. You can eliminate people quickly. You can move people forward quickly, and they're blown away. They're like, "Oh my God, this is amazing. This is the first trades company I applied to that actually responded." Just like when we need service as a homeowner, we go fill out those web forms in different companies. If we don't hear from them in 5 or 10 minutes, it's like on to the next one, on to the next one. And I think all those web forms, they just end up like in a black hole because nobody ever responds to them. The ones that do, they're crushing it simply by responding. So we're kind of going on this journey. First, we figured out, all right, we got to recruit, all the time. We got to treat it like marketing. We got to realize that it's more than just money. We figured out how to make hiring a little bit easier. Now we're going to implement an applicant tracking system, but now it comes time to actually bring this person on. And all that stuff is great, but just like a customer experience, if the technician shows up and drops the ball, it's like, wow, it was all good until the technician knocked on the door. Flip that. It's all good until our technician walks in the door on day one. How do we actually make sure not only day one is good, but that we live up to the expectations that we've set and actually keep these people on the team?
Yeah. So I talk to a lot of people. I've done a lot of workshops with hundreds of people in the audience. And you know what I've never heard someone tell me? I've never heard someone tell me there's no one out there that can turn a wrench. I've never heard that. But you know what I've heard? Nobody wants to work. Nobody wants to show up on time. Nobody wants to greet the customer friendly. No one wants to take a shower, right? Like all of these things like that they struggle with have nothing to do with doing the work. See, we can teach people how to do the work. We can send people to a trade school to learn how to do the work. But you know what we can't teach people how to do? How to think like us, how to behave like us. We cannot teach people to put the customer first. We can't teach people that communication is important. We can't teach people timeliness and punctuality. We can't teach those things. They get that from their upbringing and their past experiences. So that person shows up on day one. You need to show them that you actually care about integrating them into your company culture, teaching them the ways you behave, the way you think, the way you communicate. Teaching them those things. Instead, what we do, you said it, we toss them the keys to the truck and we say, "Hey, here's your route." And they show up at the first thing and they do it the way they did it at the last job, which is probably not the way you want it done. The customer calls and says, well, that was awful, or he's not closing enough. And all of a sudden we're like, what did we do? We hired the wrong person. No, you spent no time teaching them how to think and act and behave like you do. That's what we need to do. Like, think about this. In personal relationships, we go on a first date. And that first date's the first time we really get to know somebody. And the first date, if you think about this, is the time that you do your screening call. You call them up on the phone, you're like, hey, I got a couple questions for you. Like, that sets the tone for everything. And then what do we do in real life, in romantic relationships? We date somebody for a while. We're like, this is someone I want to grow old with. This is someone I want to start a family with. But what do we do here? We interview someone for 15 minutes. We give them 100% on the score because they actually just showed up. We bring them into the company and we're like, yay, we found somebody. We're so excited. We spent no time getting to know them. They know nothing about us. They show up that first day. Be excited that they're there. Don't throw them into a truck and say, here's your route. Teach them how to think and act like the people at your company. Integrate them into your company culture. That's the part that most people miss, because that's what goes to them showing up on time, taking care of the customer, 5-star reviews, being able to upsell. I mean, all the things that you want come out of them thinking and acting like you do.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times, and you see it more than I do, but it's like, but Ryan, we got, the board's full. We got to get these people out in the field as soon as possible. We don't have time to train them. We're just going to be losing calls, all that kind of stuff. In your experience and how you help other people, like just 50,000 foot level, what does like a standard, if you want to say, or, recommended training onboarding process look like for someone that already has experience? They already know how to turn the wrench, and we just have to teach them how we think, teach them how we act, teach them our culture, our vision, our mission, our values, and how we run calls. In your opinion, when you're working with clients, what does that look like? Just from a timeline standpoint, 50,000 foot view,
Yeah.
what's the most important things?
I'm not going to make any friends with this one. I'm just going to tell you. Onboarding is 90 days minimum. 90 days minimum. You need to have a mindset of, this is a new person. They know nothing about them. We got to learn about each other. We got to figure this out. Because here's what I've learned. The way your competition turns the wrench is probably different than the way you want your people to turn the wrench. So you can't just say, oh, they know how to turn a wrench. I mean, how many of your people that you talk to, they're like, oh, they went to the trade school, they are an awesome technician, right? Nobody ever says that. What's the trade school do? They teach them how to turn the wrench. They don't teach them how to do it right. So we got to focus on that too. So that 90-day, we break it down into a 2-week period right at the beginning. Thinking like we think. For 2 weeks, all you're doing is teaching them to think like you do. And here's the thing that most people don't like. That first 2 weeks, they are not doing any jobs on their own. They're riding along with someone else. They've got a mentor teaching them the way you do things, the way you think about things. For 2 weeks, you're not sending them out on their own. And they're like, well, I don't have time. Just like you said, oh, I don't have time. We're burning, we're bleeding. Well, how's that working out for you? Like, maybe if you stopped and actually onboarded someone well, you wouldn't have to do it over and over and over again. I love to say, why is it we always have time to do it over, but we never have time to do it right?
So true.
So that's the first 2 weeks. And then in that first 4-week period, you're teaching them how to do the job, to do like you do. So that first 4 weeks, do like we do. And then over that 12-week period, you're teaching them to win like we win. That's the 5-star reviews, the super excited customers like, oh my gosh, what an amazing technician. That's the upsells and making sure that the jobs are, they're increasing their ticket value or they're increasing their profitability on the job. That's they're keeping the CRM clean and up to date, like all the winning stuff, all the stuff that the fine little details that matter. We're teaching them that over a 90-day period. And then once they're done with that, you put them through the whole process again. Every 90 days, you're re-onboarding your people because things change. People change. Now, the second 90 days is not as intense as the first 90, but you get the idea. Like, you're constantly doing it. You can't just onboard somebody and say good, and then 3 years later say, gosh, they're so behind everybody else. It's like, because you did nothing to keep them up to speed.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at, I always equate business and team building to sports teams. They practice every day. Right? They practice every day. They have training camp every year. They go through the whole thing. Even if they've been around a while, they're still doing the same thing to continue to, quote unquote, sharpen that sword. And it's funny when I've been in the trades long enough and I've talked to enough business owners, when you try to figure out what's the common denominator amongst their most successful people when it comes to they're all in on their values, they're all in our mission, they know how to win, they know how to run our process. Usually it's one of two things. One, they started as like an apprentice or a helper. So they got to go in slowly. They see how it happens. There's no pressure on them. And they've done it for a while before they, call it a service tech. They've probably been an apprentice for at least 6 months before they become a service tech. Or it's the people that you hired when you didn't really need to hire somebody. So it's like, let's actually take this a little bit slower. Let's actually have them in the office for a couple of weeks, have them doing some ride-alongs, have them work with the service manager, have them go with your breast technician, go in the training room and do things. And it's like, holy cow, one, that 90 days goes by super fast. But then two, it's like, wow, how do we get more of these people? When the common denominator is usually it's time, right? Like we didn't throw them into the fire. We didn't say, go figure it out. We supported them because if otherwise, how do they know what winning looks like? And how do they know how to win if we haven't taught them either of those things? So now we're on this journey. We're coming to the end of this. Now we want to make sure they don't leave. They're winning with us. They're great with us. But in the back of our mind, we're always thinking, wow, this business is really dependent on Ryan because he's like our top producer. How do we make sure those people don't leave and go somewhere else?
I mean, the simple thing is find out why Ryan's a top producer. What's driving him to produce at that level? What's the personal motivator? Remember, it's never money. That money is a means to an end. Is he saving for a house? Is he putting away for college for the kids? Is he want to take his wife out on the dream vacation and travel Europe for weeks? Like, what is driving him to be a top producer? It's not the money. Because if you take $1 million and you give it to someone and say you can't spend it on anything, they're like, okay, just burn the check, right? They're doing it to buy something. What is that personal motivator? Find out what that is. Help them achieve that. They will never leave you. We had a client years ago. They were starting to hire younger generation. You probably heard that, right? Like Gen Z is like totally different, and the millennials and all of these things that they say about the generations. And what they found is that a lot of people that they were hiring had this desire to, leave a legacy, create purpose, dig wells in Africa, if you will. Like that's what they wanted to do. And so they went and got them nonprofit training. They're like, you want to start your own nonprofit? We're going to teach you how to do that. We're going to send you down to SCORE. We're going to send you down to Better Business, whoever's doing this training, so you can learn how to do a nonprofit on the side. Everybody's thinking, why on earth would I want to teach them how to start their own nonprofit? They're just going to leave as soon as it starts making money. Well, fast forward a few years, nobody left because these people are starting these side things. They're enjoying it. They feel like they're making a difference in the world. And they're like, but no employer is going to pour into me like this one did.
Yeah.
Find out what's driving them and help them achieve it.
When I think that's so much more important to these, if you want to call it the newer generations, because there is more to life than work. They want to enjoy life outside of work. It's not all about work. Yes, work is the means to an end. Money is the means to an end to empower them and allow them to do those things. But when we show them we care, they're gonna return the favor. And I was talking on a previous podcast episode where he was, I think it was Doug Thorpe was talking about a plumbing company, and he teaches anybody that wants to start their own plumbing company, he will show them everything and how to do it. Hey, this is how you do it, top to bottom, soup to nuts. This is exactly how, if I were you to start a company, this is how you do it. And a lot of times once they go through all that, they're like, holy cow, I don't want to start my own plumbing company. I just want to be a plumber for you and let you do all that because I love working here. So, when we can give our people what they want, they're going to give us what we want. And it becomes this, much more powerful relationship. So as we start kind of wrapping this up, Ryan, when it comes to taking action, there's plenty of people that have listened to the show and they're listening today. They're like, this is all great. They're going to be on a high for about an hour or two. And then within 3 hours, they're fighting the next fire. And they're like, I don't know, we'll get to that hiring thing one day. But what's one thing anybody listening one thing that they can do within the next 24 hours just to start to move their business forward? What is that one thing?
Find out why your top tech is your top tech. The thing we just talked about, find out what's driving them. Because here's the reality. We don't have a hiring problem in the trades. We have a retention problem in the trades. And if you don't believe me, go ask your accountant, how many people did we have on 12/31 and how many W-2s are we going to issue this year? If you have more W-2s than you have people, you do not have a hiring problem because you can hire. You have a retention problem. Now, it might be because you're not making good hiring decisions. That's a whole nother episode. But find out, why is your top tech your top tech? What's driving them? What's motivating them? And then when you're done with that one, go do the number 2 tech. Because if you lose those people, that's going to create way more pain for you than if you can't find new ones.
Well said. Ryan Englin, thanks again for coming on the show, sharing your journey and providing a ton of actual advice for all the blue collar business owners out there as we continue our journey to prosperity. Before we sign off there, where can our listeners go to keep in touch with you and learn more about what you do?
They can go to my website at corematters.com. In fact, I got an offer for them. If, Paul had said that I'm a best-selling author. I've got a book out there called Hire Better People Faster. I would love to offer a free copy to any of your listeners. If they go to corematters.com/free book, pay a small shipping handling fee, happy to autograph a copy, mail it out to you. So you can actually learn about the stuff that we're putting in. It's a great how-to manual on how to implement these systems and processes into your business.
There you go, guys. Go get that book so you don't have to remember everything we talked about. The book is step-by-step manual so you can not only hire, but you can retain the best talent. Ryan, thanks again for coming to the show today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Paul.
And before we go, as you know, there are a lot of moving parts when it comes to creating consistent, positive cash flow. However, the journey starts with making sure you are priced right so you can have a growing and more profitable business. I've created a super easy to use pricing calculator for everyone in the trades. You will no longer have to guess what you should charge. You'll no longer have to call around your competition and see what they charge. This calculator is easy to use and will provide you confidence and clarity that you're actually priced right. It also comes with a step-by-step PDF guide and a video walkthrough. So head on over to thebluecollaradvisors.com/price. thebluecollaradvisors.com/price to download it today and so you can start implementing it tomorrow. Until next time, remember, what got you here won't get you there. If you are ready for different results, it's time to start doing things differently.